In May of last year, I met with Dr. Spear and Katie to talk about some of these various issues that NIAA is working on, including traceability, some other things, just to kind of explore what might be some options for some communications to get information out to the cattle industry. Well, I'm sorry, I tend to be beef specific. I'm talking about the livestock industry. And one of the things that came out of this was this idea of doing a series of information pieces that would include a video segment that would go into television, namely RFD TV with their market day news reports. The audio would then be stripped out of those video segments and then distributed to ag radio networks around the country. And then the scripts themselves be repackaged as press releases for the digital and print media. So we set out last summer, number one, to secure funding for the effort, and Merck Animal Health was very gracious to step forward and essentially fund the entire endeavor. So here's a little bit of the background on the effort. The purpose was threefold: was to inform producers about this important issue, to highlight the stewardship of AMR, and then to position NIAA as the continued leader on this issue, on the One Health solutions. And as you can see by a couple of these pictures, Mark Gardner, he's a very well-known Angus seed stock producer in Ashland, Kansas. He was one of the gentlemen that we spoke with. And Justin Welsh here in Merck Animal Health, he was one of the folks that we visited with. The folks that we worked with, that's the list on the first 8. 2 of them were from Merck. We were very lucky. We happened to be in DeSoto, Kansas, near Merck's headquarters one day, and Jerome Van de Ven just happened to be there. He's only there, once a month or something, but did a great interview with us. But it's a good group of folks that represent the veterinarians, research, and the livestock industry themselves. And we try to balance the message and have a different angle. And I should mention Crystal Albers in particular was the person who really spearheaded this effort, did all the writing, the interviews, the editing of the segments, and did a great job of pulling all those things together. Summary of what we did, and I think one thing to be thinking about as a council is that these assets that we've developed, particularly the interviews, are information that should be continued to be accessed by your communications efforts in the future. There's lots and lots of great sound bites that can be repackaged in different directions as you move forward. But we conducted really good, in-depth interviews with each of those folks, developed scripts and press releases around those, and then, as you can see, audio news releases were distributed, media releases, and then all out to both print, digital, and broadcast media. Grant Company has a really good working partnership with RFD TV, so all of the segments that we produced were aired at least once. We know the Dr. Randall Spare segment was aired twice. They picked it up in September and then aired it again in November. Or I'm sorry, September and again in October. On their market day reports, some of these aired in their evening news broadcasts as well. We don't know exactly what their audience is. We have seen some snapshots in the past on their Nielsen ratings, but we tend to think that their average viewership on any during any 30-minute period would be between 20 and 35,000 viewers nationwide, segments all aired at least 3 times in the morning that they aired. So they were repeated every hour essentially, and then sometimes in the evening. We don't catch them all, but those we did catch. But we did verify with RFD TV on these segments, and they did send those along to us. This is just an example of the folks, the radio people that we know downloaded the audio file, the audio news release for use on their radio stations or radio networks. And this is just one of the segments. This is Justin Welsh's segment. I think it was the 3rd most heavily used radio segment that we produced. But you can see the coverage. Each one of these is a radio personality in a different part of the country. Lots and lots of coverage. And Radio stations vary, obviously. Like, you know, some of these guys, they might have 25 radio stations in their network. Some of these guys might just have one radio station. But the coverage was tremendous. Most of these guys would air these a couple times during the course of the day. Then we took the scripts, readapted these for distribution to print and digital media. This is what the press release looked like. Each of the press releases that went out highlighted and promoted the Antibiotic Symposium, just to keep that front and center. And this is just a couple of examples of some of the coverage. That's the Mark Gardner segment on drovers, the same one on bovine veterinarian, and then feedstuffs. Coverage was really good, by the way, on the pickup was great. But we did a lot of follow-up with the editors, making sure they got those things and making sure they ran them. But they like this kind of content, and they like to run it. 200 plus media representatives received these each time. Ag media. Readership, we have a media monitoring software that we use. The estimation on this one on drovers was that it was read 7,330 times. And that's the LaPera segment on drovers.com, just one website. Katie asked us to think about if we were to buy the ad equivalent time and space that all these places gave us, and we did some very, very conservative calculations on this. So we know that RFD-TV gave us at least 9 minutes, sometimes more, of total airtime when they aired the multiple segments throughout the day. We valued those at $1,000 a 30 seconds. And that's based on what I know, what it costs to run an ad on that show. So if it was 3 minutes times 3, it was $9,000 for that day. We just ran it at advertising equivalent. Radio, we just put at $25 a 30, very, very conservatively on each of the segments, and we figured that they aired 3 times a day. And then you can see how it all added up across the board. We didn't give a lot of value to social media, $25 per post. We think that the advertising equipment value was somewhere in a range of about $2 million when you add it all up. So it was pretty significant. So that's a big number. I can show a video if you want to see it. That'd be fine. It's the one that we put together. So we have a saying among our team called Hay in the Barn. This is a video that was shown at the Antibiotic Symposium last fall. And it just basically brings all the various best quotes into one piece and kind of frames the issue.
A new study is raising flags about the continuing rise in antibiotic resistance.
Doctors saying their worst nightmare has come true.
Antibiotic-resistant genes is spreading across the U.S.
The fact is that most antibiotic use in the United States is used on livestock.
Giving them antibiotics makes them grow bigger. And so it's done for that reason.
The U.S. uses far more antibiotics in livestock than other nations.
Antibiotic-resistant strain could be, quote, the end of the road. 3/4 of meat sold in U.S. supermarkets has antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
Health experts are concerned about the use of antibiotics on farms. So either we find new antibiotics or we're doomed.
It's a topic because it's important to our consumers, our customers, and so that concern that's been raised, we have to be aware of it and we have to address it with science and good husbandry.
The problem of antibiotic resistance is almost certainly related to how much antibiotics we use. The unfortunate part about that is we can't stop using antibiotics. They're incredibly important. So this is called the antibiotic resistance paradox. So we need other solutions beyond simply reducing antibiotic use.
Without safe and effective antibiotics, the practice of modern medicine basically collapses.
I think we forget that antibiotics at the basic level are really animal welfare drugs. They're really people welfare drugs.
You should use as much antibiotics as necessary, right? But you should eliminate all unnecessary use of antibiotics, right? The industry will agree on that. But when you go to having the option is not available to you, so it has to be antibiotic free, well then antibiotic free could very often be a welfare concern, right? Because if those animals do get sick, then what do we do?
So we have a responsibility of judicious antibiotic usage, but also we have a responsibility to treat animals when they're sick, just as physicians have a responsibility to treat children and the adults when they become sick with a bacterial infection.
Whereas antibiotics are the foundation of medicine, agriculture and the food security it provides is the foundation of civilization itself.
We have to understand that antibiotics are a finite resource. I think that we need to educate ourselves, and I think that every chance we have to communicate with consumers, we just need to communicate how we're using antibiotics.
This is a massive, massive problem. And if we're too siloed, we cannot solve this problem. We need human medical doctors talking to veterinarians. We need people in the pharmaceutical industry working much more closely with people in agriculture.
I eat the same food that you do, and my kids do too, and so we're very, very aware of it. If it's a concern to you as a consumer, then it's absolutely a concern to me because that's the reality of it.
So that's an example of the kinds of things that can be created as a result of this process. We have lots of good interviews, lots of great people talking about this issue, and continue to repackage these materials and get those out in front of folks to define this issue on our terms.
Understood.
So next steps moving forward. Phase 2 is underway. We're developing another set of 8 segments that will be going out this spring. I believe all the scripts are written, and we've got 4 of them put together. 1 of them has aired already. So we'll be back here, and hopefully, to give another positive report on the coverage we received for that. We do have a report package that we'd like to share with you on all of the coverage that we know of that we received as a result of this effort. And that's for the first 8 segments, phase 1. And you can see there's a pretty sizable pickup of all this media. And as you're going through that, feel free to ask any questions. And we've talked a lot about how to take this content that has been created as a result of this effort, repackage it, refresh it, renew it, get it out in front of new eyes. And these are just a few suggestions for this group to consider on how some of this might be used, but I think a lot of it should be looked at holistically to freshen your website as you look at maybe updating NIAA's website in the coming months and years. There's a lot of great content here that could be used to frame the issue. One thing that I can show you an example of here in a minute is the development of feature articles off this information that could go into trade media or consumer media. It occurred to us this weekend that maybe at some point there's a possibility of producing an entire long play documentary on this issue. Take all the great quotes, all the great information, and put it out there in a really great television product that people would want to watch and learn a lot about this issue. One of the things I think there's a real opportunity for NIAA also to consider would be to develop like a quarterly publication, a magazine, something like that, that would allow you to educate and inform on all the issues that you're dealing with, from traceability all the way to this one. And of course, social media infographics and short play videos. A lot of these videos could be chopped down into short pieces, just sound bites that people could be that could be deployed on your Facebook and other social media assets. This is actually this graphic, this design set of design concepts. This is a feature article that we developed last week, and don't pay attention too much to this photo. This is just a photo we just grabbed online, but it's an example of how you might be able to repackage some of these materials into a magazine format. And so this would be a 2-page spread within a magazine, And it's a story about a veteran from Palm Springs, California, who got an infection, couldn't be treated, and passed away in 2010. And his parents have been very involved with CDC. This story can be repackaged. It's just a draft, just an example. But this will be a 2-page spread here. So you start with a story like this about the person who's directly impacted by this issue, terribly impacted by it. You bring science in. We've got Dr. Solomon, Dr. Kahn here talking about the issue and the positive things to say about agriculture. And then you land on a positive message from Mark Gardner. And so these are all 2-page spreads. Again, we just kind of threw this together as an example of how these things. But 2/3 of this content is information that was in the scripts or the press releases. We just copied and pasted and built the feature articles, wrote some new transitions, updated some of the information, and gave it a more of a consumer type focus, but allows NIAA to frame the issue on NIAA's terms and also agriculture's terms. So, quick summary. As you page through that thing, I think you should be happy with the coverage that we received. It was really, really good. That's a pretty heavy book. In fact, we spent about a week trimming it down so that it would actually fit into fewer pages. But good coverage. We're happy with, especially with the first-time effort, with the kind of coverage we got. Radio and TV was great. I think they're going to be looking for more content. We actually get calls from RFD TV asking for more segments like this, so we know that they want it. Digital media's been good. We don't have a lot on what happened in the print media because we don't subscribe to a lot of those publications, but if you happen to see those, pass those along to Katie, and we'll add it into our database. Again, the $2 million on the ad equivalent space and time. We think that's a fair number. And I think I should say as a continued leader, so was a leader before this thing started, but it has allowed NIAA to step forward and get information out on this. So if you have any questions at all, I want to email either Crystal or myself. That's our contact information here. That's my cell number. We're based just north of Kansas City. We do 95% of the work we do is within agriculture, dairy, swine, beef, and our website is grantcompany.net. And we really appreciate the opportunity to have done this work and excited about phase 2. I do want to mention Dr. Sybil, who came in late, but that's all right. But he was instrumental in securing the sponsorship for both phase 1 and phase 2, and without his help, this thing would not have happened. So, thank you.
Any questions for Eric? I think, as you can see, oh, go ahead, Ernie.
Eric, do you think the uptake of this is going to be outside of the normal ag?
I think that be careful what you wish for. I think that you know, as this material develops and you get it out on YouTube and social media, everybody has access to it, right? And I think have to be a little bit careful about aggressively pushing it out too much. But I think you should make it available to people who are interested in finding it. And I think a great way to describe it is the media environment is a pull-through environment. People are selecting what they want to see and look at. It's no longer a push environment where we print stuff like the old New York Times, just send it out, right? So you have to be positioned for the pull-through environment, which is people just Googling and finding it. And but I waffle back and forth on that a little bit. We've done some background research trying to find some of those editors are out there who might be sympathetic to what we're doing. But I think the big thing, at least in the early stages of this, is to make it available for people to find, so that it can be a counterbalance to other stuff that's out there that's being said that's negative about us. And I think that what you find with a lot of these videos in particular is that there's an initial spike in interest, you know, and then they die, and then if they're good videos, then they really start to go about a year later, or, you know, whatever. But they get discovered, and then they go. And Holstein, we did a lot of work for the Holstein Association, and that's exactly what happened this year. A year ago, we aired their first TV show, and the spike was good, and then it died. And then, I mean, I could show you a slide. It just went crazy this year. People found the stuff, and it went. And then, you know, you're reaching the folks.
The reason I asked, I've shared this story before in other meetings, that, you know, you go to the doctor's office and you sit, you're waiting to get in, and, you know, doctor's office TV is on, so to speak, and the information is scrolling on those televisions or those media channels that are in those offices, waiting rooms, is not always accurate as far as I'm concerned, or from what I understand. You know, wouldn't it be interesting if we could get uptake in that community with information like this that is accurate, to at least balance that out, so that the other side of the story is being told. Yeah. And to me, that's a simple one to attempt to at least have a conversation with. They may not want the information or grab it up, but at least you have a conversation and offer to them. Because somebody obviously is.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you 100%. We've got to find a way to get this out into folks, in front of eyeballs out there. The most important thing, I think, for NIAA is to develop the stuff that allows you to do that. Okay? Because the biggest mistake organizations make is say, we got to say this, but you don't have squat to do it, right? Because if you need 7 seconds of a chicken video, and you don't have it, that's forever, you know? And so we tend to tell organizations to focus on the development of the assets, the photos, the good interviews, the video, get good interviews, get those transcribed, know what you have, and then you can push it a lot of different directions very quickly and very efficiently, you know. And that's what this does. That's what this process does. And that's why I say earlier on the transcriptions, there's lots and lots of information that we have that can be repurposed into other things to get in front of folks even more as we move forward. And really, I mean, the phase one here, we are just dipping our toe in the water here, right? And a lot of this stuff, we know the media likes it. We know they want to run it. Now we just got to find the right folks out there in the consumer universe that want to see it too.
So I think it's, judging by your report that you have there, Eric, it's the first step. Right. It's a continuous process. I think Rick will talk a little bit later about the human side at the end as we wrap up about what they're doing and how we're reaching out to doctors. I know, having just attended the Animal Agriculture Liaison Committee for the AVMA, there's a push, trying to push the AVMA to their 93,000 veterinarians to let them know. I mean, so there's a lot of, we're kind of rolling the rock uphill. But I think Eric has it right. If you don't have the content, then you're never going to put anything out. And this is out there on the web. It's out there where people can find it, and they've done a good job of branding that to get that out there. So, yeah. Any other questions for? All righty. Well, let's thank.